to the Black Hills of South Dakota. The Indians call the land we're in here today Ha-Ha-Sapa. It's a Lakota Sioux word. When you translate it, it means hills black, and that's where we get our English derivation of the name. Now, the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868 gives all the land that you're in today here. That's a ghost. 4 saloons, 33 brothels on this one strip alone. Oh yeah, Deadwood was definitely the place to be back then. For comparison now, we got 88 casinos here in town today. And town in the early days suffered disaster one after the other. Fire in 1879 burned the whole place down. Flood of 1883 took it all away again. All these buildings you see here are actually built on foundations, the old buildings that were there before. And to welcome you to the little town of Deadwood here, I should tell you a little bit about our town here. We get 137 inches of snowfall a year here. That's 11 and a half feet of snow on the annual basis. So if you come in the winter, bring your shovels. We could sure use the help. By the way, we do have 4 seasons here. We call them winter, summer, and winter. Just staying in competition with North Dakota, because up there they got 2 seasons, which they refer to as shovel and swat. Now, talking about old buildings and stuff, off on your right here, the Stonefront building is the Bullock Hotel. It was built in 1895 by our first town sheriff, Seth Bullock. And do you guys watch that show, Unsolved Mysteries, by the way?
Yes.
Okay, you know that this building right here was featured on that show? Because the ghost of Seth Bullock is still in there today. Up on that 3rd floor, he's been roaming around up there, turning on lights, opening, closing doors and windows, moving objects and items around. Leaving that toilet seat up. Come on now, next time you get blamed for that, remember, the ghost of Seth Bullock. Now, someone else that got famous here was a gal by the name of Poker Alice Tubbs. She used to do Pharaoh cards here, a game of poker. ABC actually did a show on this gal 8 years ago, made-for-TV movie put out by ABC. They cast Elizabeth Taylor in that title role, and they called it Poker Alice, the Gambling Lady.
Yeah, I saw that.
You did?
Yeah.
You're the first in 23 years. Of course, it only came out 8 years ago. Amazingly. You like the show?
You talking about on television?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good show?
Yeah. The one I saw.
All right.
Taylor as Poker Alice stuff.
Yeah. Well, we got a picture of Poker Alice right in our bus here. 3rd picture up over your head there. There she is with that stogie in her mouth. Looks exactly like Elizabeth Taylor. You'll never forget her face. You know, the Midnight Star there, where you guys got on, that was Kevin Costner's casino. Yeah, this town is full of famous things and people. Well, in fact, if you guys get out and mosey around town here, you're going to come down this direction. If you mosey on down here and check out the building here on your right, the Celebrity Hotel, inside there you're going to find, of all things, the Batmobile. From Batman and Batman Returns, remember that miniseries MASH?
Yes.
The Jeep from that is on display. Evel Knievel's motorcycle's in there. James Bond's car from The Living Daylights that Aston Martin he drove. And you guys remember Herbie the Love Bug, don't you?
Yeah.
Well, guess where he's at
Where?
today? Right here in this building, here in Deadwood, South Dakota. Yeah.
What's there from MASH?
That Jeep?
Oh, the Jeep.
Yeah, so we got a lot of movie memorabilia here in town. So if you make it down this way, check it out. You guys won't be disappointed. Well, let me get back to history for you here. Across the street from them, above the green awning there in big bold letters so you never forget it, this is the original location of Saloon Number 10. This is where Wild Bill was shot and killed during the August 2nd, 1876 poker game. Wild Bill Hickok, legend of the Old West, who died here in Deadwood, South Dakota and put us on the map. Yeah. He was actually killed by a fellow by the name of Jack McCall. McCall shot him about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, came running out of the saloon, jumped on his horse, but he'd forgotten to tighten the cinch strap. Saddle and everything go tumbling to the ground. He jumps up out of the dust, runs down the street, and as busy and wide awake as this town is at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they lose the fella. He made it 2 blocks up the road there, to a building called the Big Horn Store. They found him hiding in the back there. 6 hours later, placed him under arrest. And then they bring him down to the Bella Union Theater, which sat right next door here, and they locked him up there in their outhouse. And the 4 G's stood for guns, gold, gals, and your guts. Okay, now is it making sense to you? Well, they tried to find 12 sane men that would sit on a jury trial and try to convict this fella. If you could find 12 sane men in the town of Deadwood, now come on. Yeah, no, I mean even today. You'd be lucky. Stick to gambling, the odds are better for you in that respect.
Go for the win.
Now, the greatest disaster that ever happened in the town of Deadwood happened underneath these green awnings here on your left. This is the site of our longest running brothel, closed down in 1980 by the IRS for tax evasion. Now, isn't that horrible? No, that was after 103 years worth of dedicated service. What were they thinking? It was such a fixture here in town too, called Pam's Purple Door. See, our townspeople did not want it closed down. When the IRS moved in, put all these items inside up for auction, townspeople came out and they started buying, purchasing the doorknobs off the building itself for $100 a piece. Set of drapes sold for $1,000, chest of drawers $5,000. Somebody even bought a brass bed from the place, paid $15,000 for that. Evidently had established some pretty fond memories in that one. Turned into white slavery. We had names like the Medallion, the Green Front, or how about the Gem Theater, just to name a few of them. Locals, though, referred to these places in a collective sense, calling them houses of horizontal pleasure. And you had 80 men at bathhouses, laundries, that sort of thing. The money makers for them, though, were their drugstores. For 20 cents in gold coin or gold dust, you could drop down into their underground tunnels and take a hit of opium or cocaine. Eventually, though, they were shut down for that. And it was actually illegal back in those days. And they had these underground tunnels also for the Chinese to scoot around after 9 o'clock at night, because if they were caught out on the streets, the white men would cut their ponytails off. And to them, that was a sign of disgrace. They were never dealt with politely here in Deadwood by the white people. If a white person actually killed a Chinese person back in that day, they would only be fined $25, and that was a big maybe. Oh yeah, a white man steals a horse though, boy, they would hang the guy on the spot. Not fair to the Chinese. In fact, the last Chinese left here about 1932, they were chased off by the Ku Klux Klan. That's what happened to them. Now, off on your right in front of the building here, you're going to see Wild Bill sitting in his chair. There he is. Sits there day and night, rain or shine, it don't matter. You know, kind of keeping silent vigil over the town of Deadwood. Year after year, just sitting there watching out for Elvis. This is full of dead trees, limbs, branches, and that sort of thing. Well, that's where we got the name, Deadwood. That simple as that. They plant the area out. They discovered gold in the process. Largest placer mine discovery of gold in the world. Bigger than the Comstock lode even. Word of gold got out. By June of 1876, more than 10,000 people had shown up here. By August of that year, that population had burgeoned to over 25,000 people. But just for comparison, we got less than 2,000 living here today. That's a big difference. And you know, with the influx of all these people in the early days, we had a murder hanging or a suicide occurring almost every day for the first 6 months. Yeah, they're calling our cemetery up here the Silent City because it was growing nearly as fast as our town was back then. Leading cause of death, flame jumping. Everywhere you'd stick your foot in the stream without asking, they'd shoot you for trespassing. So if you came out here to stake out a mining claim, it's best if you did it with a buddy of yours. That way one of you could sleep and the other could stand guard. And that way you wouldn't get shot in the back and have your claim stolen away from you. Now, are you guys going to go up and see Crazy Horse too? Well, you know, Korzak Ziolkowski, the guy who did Crazy Horse, did the Bust of Wild Bill off on your left here. Same fella. When Wild Bill showed up to town in June of 1876, he set up camp right about this location here. And we put that up to commemorate him. You know, that bus has been pretty popular around here. It's actually been stolen from us on 3 separate occasions now.
That looks like a church.
And they keep bringing it back because it's so heavy to lug around. Oh, I pulled my back out the last time.
Is that a church right ahead?
Nope, straight in front of us, that's the county courthouse. It was built in 1907. Right up here on your right is the federal courthouse, built in 1908. Well, that building, ornate and structure and all, was the county courthouse. In 1989, they condemned it. They said it's structurally unsound. A brick might fall off at someone on the head for a lawsuit. And we asked them, what can we do? They said, you have to tear it down and rebuild it to code. Well, we didn't have the money to do that. We asked if we could refurbish the place. We looked at the cost, and it was even greater than tearing the building down in the first place. Well, 1989 was the year gambling arrived at Deadwood. Suddenly, the revenue appeared. We picked the latter choice, and we saved our building. One of the good things gambling has actually done to the city of Deadwood. Now, as we turn the corner here, we're going to be heading up Whitewood Gulch. And a fella up here by the name of Jolly used to run a business for us. And he called his business the Jolly Brothers Funeral Home. Oh, he was a happy soul, and I like this guy. But he sold out 7 years ago to a fella named Kaput right here on your left. Come on, you see it with your own 2 eyes. They will not lie to you. The old Kaput Funeral Home. They say if you're that far gone, if you die in Deadwood and go Kaput, you're out of here. There's no hope for you. We do have some interesting signs here in town. We've got one sign here that says second-hand antiques. I never knew you could get those any other way. Built some nice homes throughout here. The one in front of us off on the right with the cone-shaped roof on top there happens to be the Adams house, built in 1892. They built that for $10,000 back then. Theodore Roosevelt even stayed in that house one time. In fact, Theodore Roosevelt and Seth Bullock, our first town sheriff, were actually personal best friends. And because of that, we got a few perks here in town. One of them happened to be the fact that in 1917, Mount Moriah Cemetery was granted the right to fly the U.S. flag 24 hours a day. Only the third location in the United States at that time to be able to do that with honors. The other two locations happened to be the U.S. Capitol and the White House. So that is quite an honor for us right there. But as we head up the steep slopes of this mountain here, I got to fill you in on some history of Wild Bill and all. Wild Bill Hickok. Now his real name is James Butler Hickok. He was born in Troy Grove, Illinois, May 27, 1837. That's 166 years ago. His father was a Presbyterian deacon. He had a couple brothers and sisters, shows a proficiency with a gun at an early age. And he goes on to become, actually at the age of 14, he was considered a professional marksman. 20 years old, he served as a spy scout and a sharpshooter in the Civil War. That was over. He continued on as a guide with General Sherman, later became a scout for Custer and all. And developed a good friendship there. Wild Bill, the man himself, stood over 6 feet tall. Weighed in at 160 pounds. He's about as tall as me. I have 15 or 20 pounds on him because I like to eat. He had that long, flowing, dark hair, handlebar mustache, rather than like a fella. And he carried with him 2 sets of pistols at all times. One was a set of Navy Colts. Now, these were silver-plated and engraved, and we hear that they were gifts to him from Custer, so that should tell you about their friendship right there. And those guns he wore in a sash wrapped around his waist, rather high up on his hips, with the handle was facing forward. You see, Wild Bill never carried his guns in a holster like you think a cowboy of the Old West might. When we get off the bus at the cemetery, check the picture up front here out on your left. This picture shows you how Wild Bill carried his guns up on his sides, almost up underneath his armpits there. Quite different than we would have ever expected. I'll get back to the story here in a little bit, but right now as we come around that corner, hairpin curve and all, if you look out your right windows, you're going to see some devastation from a forest fire that came through here June of last year. This fire burned 11,000 acres, destroyed 7 homes and 15 structures here in Deadwood. The fire lasted for almost 2 weeks. Our town was evacuated for 2 days and 2 nights during that time. And now, a month after this fire was extinguished, a half-inch of rain fell on that mountain range over there. And guess what? 8 inches of mud came sliding down the mountain into the streets of Deadwood. It took us a week to clean it up using backhoes and other heavy equipment. And just after we got it cleaned up, guess what again? It rains again, another half-inch, and another 8 inches of mud came sweeping right back down to the city streets of our town. See, for June, July, and then August of last year, we were pretty busy. First some fires and then that flood. This year was supposed to be famine. I was kind of stocking up on that one. All right, now Mount Moriah Cemetery is off on your left here, otherwise known as Boot Hill. Anytime you bury a cowboy, boots on, head facing west, you get over 100,000 people coming up here every year to pay their respects to Wild Bill. You can now count yourselves among them. Well, why is Wild Bill so famous? Lots of people keep coming up here to pay their respects to the guy. That's why. He's got to be famous. Actually, it happens to do with newspapers and things like that. Exposure, the more you get your name in print or your picture in a magazine or your name on the silver screen or credits that way, you get famous. It doesn't have everything to do with talents, as you can tell with Kevin Costner and all. But nonetheless, don't tell him I told you that. But nonetheless, Wild Bill did have some talents that he applied to trades in his life that got him to where he is today. To cover up anything. To cover a little bit of history for you here, newspaper articles started getting written about this guy, Wild Bill, a character out west who was killing people. Harper's New Monthly Magazine was writing these stories. The writer's name was Colonel George Ward Nichols. Comes out at the age of 28, Wild Bill killed a fellow by the name of Dave Tutt. 2 slugs in that guy's stomach before his guns ever cleared leather. He was a dead man. Now, is there an exciting story there? I bet you there is, and I want to read it. Well, you got to remember now, this is the days before television was here to entertain us and all, right? You had to read the story, then use your imagination, put it all together. What a concept. Don't you wish your kids today knew this? But there's an exciting tale there. The next time you see Wild Bill's name in print, boy, he's got to have done something at this time too, so you want to read it. And the next time, a month later, actually, his name came out again. He killed another fella. That poor chap's finger never even reached his trigger before he had gone to meet his maker. Ooh, boy, I can't wait to read this tale. And what happens here is that newspaper editors note that every time they print Wild Bill's name, they sell out on their publications. Now it's a money matter. You know, Wild Bill had always tried to get rich in life, but he never made it. But he sure made some newspaper editors, owners, and things like that rich. And look at what he's doing for the town of Deadwood today. Over $100,000 in revenue for our town. For each and every one of you that shows up here, we have to fess up $1 in order to donate to the cemetery here. And then there's a lot of other money that comes in from gambling. And they're all coming here early because this is an old western town made famous by this guy right here. Well, because of these stories that start getting written about Wild Bill, he becomes a household name back east. You know, these are stories written for eastern readers who want to live that vicarious life of the western frontier. And because of that, by the time Wild Bill was 32 years old, he was considered the fastest gun in the West. He had killed between 15 and 100 people, depending on whose count you want to go by right there. And that wasn't including Civil War rebels or Indians even. You know, by legend, this guy had 26 notches on one gun. Yet now, if you want to put that into perspective, he was faster than Clint Eastwood. Oh boy, was he fast. Now, is he really this fast, or are these just stories? Because keep in mind, they could embellish the tale back then just like they can today. But I'll throw some facts at you for you, and you can decide on your own accord which judgment you'll come to here. But stepping back in time, just to tell you how popular Wild Bill was and all. When he died in 1876, he wasn't buried here. He was actually buried down the hillside from us here, a place called Ingleside Cemetery. During those gold rush days, people were more excited about all this gold they take out of the streams than anything else. Well, the more gold you take out, the less gold you find. Gold rush fever dies off. 1879, 3 years later, suddenly downstream from us, they start finding more gold. Not in the form of nuggets, though. It was in the form of jewelry. Rings, necklaces, bracelets, that sort of thing. Well, what they discover is that the graveyard is washing out right from underneath their feet. And boy, did they start to worry. Because as famous as Wild Bill was, they thought the guy might try to leave town. They went down and dug him up. They moved him up here in 1879. As many other bodies as they could get out of there. In 1891, they erected a 9-foot monument. It looked exactly like this one here, except it was made out of sandstone. The caption on the front there, by the way, reads, "Custer was lonely without him." You know, that lends credence to the fact he and Custer were pretty good friends. There's a fact to fill in for you there. But you know what? I want you to keep in mind one thing here. That Custer died a month and a half before him at the Battle of Little Bighorn. Yeah, these guys aren't only too long without each other, so we don't have to cry over that one. But you know what? Souvenir hunters are getting up here, breaking little pieces of a sandstone monument off and running home with it. And by the turn of the century, they wore a 9-foot monument like this down to just a little stud. That's how popular he was. You know, if he's this popular, we had to have something here to commemorate him. So they put a statue of Wild Bill in there after that. Now this time they tried to protect it. They built the chicken wire enclosure around the guy, and then they put up this cast iron fence made out of what looks like bed springs from our brothel right there. Now this will not keep those souvenir hunters, vandals, thieves in the lot away. Those characters are so devilishly clever, they figured out a way to get in there. How, I don't know. You guys figure it out, okay? Somehow, someway, they got inside. They cut through the chicken wire, and now with little pickaxes, they started chipping away at old Wild Bill. Now, first they ran off with the guy's guns. Next went his arms, and after that, he couldn't defend himself. Before long, he'd lost his head over the matter. You know, one of his legs even tried to escape on its own just to get away from these vandals. Yeah, we found that out here in the cemetery. You have to have those things work in tandem to get where you're going. Well, we came in, we rescued the torso of the statue of Wild Bill, the missing leg, we put them together, and we put that in our local museum as a piece of history. And then we went through some different markers which suffered the same fate after that. What you see here today is actually relatively new. This monument was erected May 27th, Wild Bill's birthday of last year, 2002. And this monument is made out of clay, but the outside has been bronzed to make it withstand, you know, time, element, weather, that sort of thing. And hopefully any pickaxe attacks if that should occur. Now, since we're talking about the grave sites here, if you look behind Wild Bill's grave, there's Calamity Jane's grave, another famous character or resident of Deadwood. The placard on the front there says her real name was Martha Jane Burke. Actually, her real name was Martha Jane Canary, or Cannery, depending on how you want to say it. In 1895, she married a fellow by the name of Clinton Burke. A lot of people dispute that, because there's no marriage certificate that we've ever found. So whether she is married or not, we don't know. A lot of her history is steeped in mystery. But we do know she was born May 1st of 1852. And she was born in Princeton, Missouri. Now, she's also born in Burlington, Iowa, Fort Laramie, Wyoming, and Salt Lake City, Utah. It's just for your information there. See, her mother must have one of the longest labors I've ever read about in history. That, because all those cities have actually claimed her at one time or another. So, in case you ever hear anything different, I want you guys to know your tour bus driver never did lie to you, okay? All right. Now there's an urn on top of her grave there, and that urn is exactly like the 4 urns over here behind that headquest stone. You see those over there? Now that grave over there belongs to a lady by the name of Dora Dufran. She was a local madam back in that day. And when Calamity Jane had fallen on hard times, Dora Dufran gave her a second shot at life, took her in. Now that's an exceptional act from this woman, and I like her. Not because of that, though, but because Dora Dufran over here ran 4 brothels. Yeah, one was here in Deadwood, one in Lead, Bellpouche, and Rapid City. It was actually one of the first franchises to ever come to the Black Hills of South Dakota. Now her will specifically stated that after she died, she wanted those 4 urns placed on her grave because they represent the 4 brothels she ran while she was alive. Now back in those days, they always referred to things by code words. Even the saloons here, the number 10 where Wild Bill was killed. Yep, and Dora Dufran's establishments were called the 3 Ds. And all the guys knew the story here, and they always kept it the same. A guy comes home after a hard day's work, he wanted to unwind. He tells his woman, "I'm going out for the night." The woman tells him, "Where do you think you're going?" You know, same voice, it was kind of scary. The guy back off. He goes, "Well, you know, I'm just going out to the 3 Ds." And the woman had asked about this, pressing the issue, and the guys always explained it this way. The 3 Ds stand for drinking, dining, and dancing. That's all. What they have done is pulled the wool over the women's eyes. Oh, yeah, because you know, if them women had known about this extra-curricular activity going on at Dufran's establishment there, those Ds would have stood for things like divorce or you're dead. But see, Dora Dufran here knew she could keep it a secret and even take it to the grave with her. That's why she had these gargoyle faces put on the bases there, because she said only the demons of the underworld will be able to look down upon her after her departure from this world and laugh about the secret that was buried therein. Yeah, at least she knew where she was going. And you know what? When she died in 1934, she did take this secret with her. Because when she died, they did not list her profession in that paper as a brothel madam. Her obituary simply stated that a famous local social worker has died from Deadwood. Very polite and discreet. Now, in Dora's grave plot over there, there's one placard, and it says Fred on it. And Fred was her pet parrot. He died the week after she did. Ate an artificial cherry off of a lady's hat. It got hung up in his throat. He choked to death. Oh, what an awful way for an old bird to croak. But you know what? It's purported that over 300 people came to Fred's funeral. Yeah, because they said Fred knew as many secrets as Dora did, and they wanted to make sure he was 6 feet under as well. There you have some stories for you. We want you to grab your pictures here because we got to get back to the bus and everything. If you have any questions, just ask me.
Why was he killed?
I'm going to get to that here as we walk down the hill and get on the bus. Stones is the one right over here by the tree. You see that one looks like a bullet there? This is Robert McCarroll on the side here. Now it looks innocent enough, but what's so interesting about that one there is the caption at the very bottom, which says, "Erected by his loving wife, Margaret." Take a look at that one again and you tell me what you think. All I know is this guy died at the age of 45, and I hear they had a hard time closing the casket on that old boy. Somebody just a tad more wilder than old Wild Bill right there. All right. It's almost like quicksand stepping into that stuff here. There we are.
What year did...
Green.
Well, that was my relation over there.
At the information center here last week about those plots, they said one belongs to a 95-year-old gal who's actually teaching water aerobics up at the YMCA in Lee. They told me not to hold my breath on that one. Now, well, listed as causes of death, and these are listed by doctors and midwives here, so these are legitimate causes of death. We had suicide, alcohol, bad whiskey, opium, and dope, cataract, summer complaints, softening of the brain, inflammation of the bowels, hobnail liver, broken thumb, teething, old age, hung by vigilantes, scored by a buffalo, ran over by a stagecoach, fell into a mine shaft, hit by flying bar glass, eating 14 hard-boiled eggs.
Don't ever eat 14 hard-boiled eggs. Stop at 12 or go on to 15.
Now, summer complaint was diarrhea.
telling some of the causes of death.
Now, I don't know if that had to do with them eggs or not. But cataract, influenza, hobnail liver, apathy, cirrhosis. Take heart, no one ever died hiking up the Wild Bill Trail. Way back down the hill, we're all going to sing that song, 100 bottles of beer on the wall.
Have them to pass around?
All right, where's the open chair? There it is.
So the person would be famous.
All right. In Wild Bill's history, when he was 34 years old, he became the sheriff of Abilene. Probably the best job he was ever going to have in life. He got to be judge, jury, and executioner all in the same person. And he thought it was the best job in his life. Now, Wild Bill at heart was really a gambler. That's what he was, a professional one, too. He made quite a bit of money doing this. But he was also a lawman during the Civil War. He had several jobs over time. He was an outrider, bullwhacker, stagecoach driver, spy, scout, sharpshooter, traveled with the Buffalo Bill Cody Show, been on the Pony Express, and had been the deputy U.S. Marshal at Hays City, Kansas, before he takes this job. In Abilene, Kansas, when he took that job, you got to keep in mind Abilene was a cow town. You know what a cow town is? Okay, these cowboys from Texas run cattle up there, put them on trains, ship them to Chicago to the slaughtering houses. And a cowboy out on a cattle drive has not seen whiskey, women, time off, or pay in weeks on end. When they get to Abilene, it all falls into their hands at once. So what happens in Abilene, Kansas? It turns into Party Town, USA. It's kind of like spring break. You know, it's Cowboys Gone Wild. Get your videos today. 1995. Well, Wild Bill had, all this commotion, the revelry going on there, it's getting out of hand. In fact, the marshal before Wild Bill was actually killed in ambush the month earlier. Yeah, and by the way, the marshal's name was Tom Smith. Sounds like an alias to me. But the job opened up and Wild Bill took it. He likes this job because he gets to rule Abilene from the poker tables, and he gets to be judge, jury, and executioner all in the same person. But while on the job, he made one small mistake. He accidentally killed his own deputy. Oops. Yeah, well, see, he was in a gunfight on the streets of Abilene. Out come the guns, there's a volley of fire. He heard a noise behind him. He operates off of instinct. He turned, fired, and shot, and then turned his head. Bullet entered the man's chest, and then Wild Bill recognized the guy's face. Mike Williams, his own deputy. See, Mike had heard the gunfire, and the shootout was coming up to assist the sheriff, got gunned down right in his tracks. Now, see, I told you Wild Bill was fast, right? Yeah, guess what? He is too fast for his own good. There's a problem right there. Here, if you want to keep the sun off of you.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll get you guys in the back there out of the sun here in just a second. Could you imagine them trying to hire for that job a week later? I just killed my deputy. I need a new hire. How about you, sir? Yeah, nobody wants this job, do they? Well, losing face of the matter, he left Abilene. He ended up in Cheyenne, Wyoming, where he met the love of his life. Her name was Agnes. Agnes Lake Thatcher. Yeah, no relation to Margaret. Don't get excited. But Agnes was 11 years his senior. She was an equestrian acrobat, owned her own circus. The gal had money. Wild Bill at heart, and I told you was a gambler, right? Now, if you ask me, there's a match made in heaven right there. A gambling man, a woman with money. That's all I'm asking for out of life. But they said, Wild Bill's getting old about this time. She was 50. He was 39. Why are they calling him old? Well, think of this. 39 years old was a ripe old age for a gunslinger. You didn't live all too long in that profession, not unless you were good at what you did. This goes to prove to you that Wild Bill was probably as fast as they said he was, and these weren't just stories that were written about him early on. But you know what? About this time in his life, he was slowing down. He wasn't as quick as he was in his youth. He wasn't as fast off the draw there, wasn't as steady with the gun. And they said his eyesight was waning right about this time in his life. Yeah, I saw a picture of Agnes, definitely. His eyesight was waning right about this time in his life. Truth of the matter on that one. But they had a picture of it inside the building here. But they were married for 3 short months, and that's when word hit Cheyenne, Wyoming, that gold had been discovered 200 miles north of them here in Deadwood Gulch. Now, Wild Bill, he is all torn apart inside between the love of his life, Agnes, and gold fever, and you know who wins out.
Gold.
Yeah, because you're not in Cheyenne right now. But you know what takes the pride and the pride of his 2 best friends to get him to leave? That was Colorado Charlie Utter and Charlie's brother Steve. Yeah, otherwise known as the Utter Brothers. You saw that one coming, didn't you? But it's true. You don't have to like this stuff. And Wild Bill and their persuasion comes out here, leaves his wife behind. June of 1876 arrives to Deadwood. And now why did Wild Bill come here? Remember what I told you. He had one true love in his life. He was a professional gambler. And it's that love right there that puts him where he is today. Tell you that story so I can get you guys out of the sun there. And let's see here. Wild Bill, you know what I think was going on in his life? He had married a rich woman. He felt kind of inadequate in the fact that he wasn't providing for her. And he wanted to show something for what he could offer her. So I think he came up here to get rich quick like a lot of other people were doing. And when he got to town, he's going to make a living by day prospecting for the elusive mineral gold, and then afternoons and evenings he'd be in the saloons gambling, trying to win himself some more. And the fateful day for him will come on August 2nd of 1876 when he got involved in a poker game on that one saloon he passed on the way up here. about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He went in, sat down amongst friends. Carl Mann, Captain Massey had taken the choice seats in the house, you know, those chairs with the backs up against the wall. Wild Bill was left with his back open. He didn't like it, kept his hand on his gun the whole time he played. And about 2 hours into that, oh, there go the brakes. Just kidding. All right, I was just trying to wake you guys up there. I knew you were falling asleep on me. 2 hours into the game, through those swinging doors came a fella by the name of Crooked Nose Jack McCall. You know, he'd seen Wild Bill sitting there. He sees Wild Bill has his hand on his gun, and he knows these stories that I was telling you about, how fast Wild Bill was. So he played it safe. He went to the bar to have a drink. Wild Bill eyed him, figured he wasn't a threat, kept on playing. And about that time, Wild Bill was dealt a winning hand in that card game. And this is what's going to turn out to be a losing hand for his life. Because now, with him thinking he's going to win himself some money, he wants to maximize his profits, so he's going to increase the bet. And when he went to do so, he made a fatal mistake. Because he took his hand off of his gun just for a moment, had both hands up on that table, was pushing that money out in front of him, and McCall had seen the opportunity. Turned as he was going to leave the bar, he pulled out his gun, raced it to the back of Wild Bill's head, pulled the trigger, and the Prince of Pistolers was killed at the age of 39. Assassinated in the little town of Deadwood, South Dakota, and that's what it's going to read like in the newspapers. You know, Wild Bill never saw this coming. Never, if the brakes had gone out, this would have stopped us right here. So he didn't have anything to worry about. No rock barricades here. The last thought that crossed Wild Bill's mind were the cards he held there in his hand. He carried a pair of black aces, black eights, and the red nine of diamonds. That's what we call the dead man's hand today. The game they were playing, by the way, was called 7-Up. They caught this McCall character, put him on trial here in Deadwood. Initially, they acquit the man of murder. They retried him at the federal level, found him guilty, and they sentenced him to death. They ended up hanging him March 1st, 1877 on his 27th birthday. Yep, just deserves for the crime he committed. But thus came to the end of the road a fellow that we grew to know as Wild Bill Hickok, a man who'd become a legend in his own day, a hero of the Old West. And I salute Wild Bill for being the man of stature he was and for putting Deadwood on the map. Because, you know, without that man right there, I wouldn't have a job today.
Why were they initially going to acquit him?
He goes into a vigilante court on Indian land initially. He goes in there and he tells these people, Wild Bill killed my brother years ago in Kansas. This is revenge. Revenge, I tell you, for the murder of my kin. See, they understand vigilante justice out here. You know, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Oh yeah, they called the guy a rascal. They said, get your belongings and get out of camp. So he left. But McCall, a month later, was down in Laramie, Wyoming, bragging about the murder of a U.S. Marshal. But you know who he was bragging to? Another U.S. Marshal.
Whiter.
No, everybody says that. But no, he was bragging, and he's on federal land. Look at it this way. Federal land, he admits a federal crime to a federal officer. The guy arrested him. They shipped him out to the Dakota Territory Federal Courthouse, 350 miles east of us here in Yankton, South Dakota. And that's where they will try him for the murder of U.S. Marshal James Butler Hickok and find him guilty after they discover that this guy never even had a brother. Yes. That's why they sentenced him to death. Yep, and that's why they hung him out there, buried him in a Catholic cemetery, noose around his neck to this day. By the way, I think that's why they called it Yankton, because they yanked him in Yankton. All right, but Wild Bill really puts Deadwood on the map, but so did another gal, or another person, I should say, by the name of Calamity Jane. Now, her story is different than anybody's you'd ever read in life. She looks like a guy, talks like a guy, acts like a guy, dresses like a guy, passes herself off to be a guy just so she can take jobs away from us guys. You see, she's our first women's liber. Everybody wants to give that title to Doris Day back in the 1940s, and guess what? We found out who started it all. A gal who stood 5 feet 8 inches tall, weighed 140 pounds, walked around telling people, I can outshoot and I can outride, but I can outspit, outdrink, outcuss, outthink, outdo any man alive. The kind of gal right there I would love to take home to meet my mother. Oh boy. Yeah, and you know she lived her life to prove these things too. She made her living off the streets of Deadwood doing tricks for people with her bullwhip and her gun. Now she was a crack shot with a pistol, a performer at heart. But all the money she made went straight to the whiskey. You see, she had a drinking problem, affinity for the alcohol and all. Yeah, so much so she had to have a second job in life in order to have the money to buy food, eat, and stay alive. And you know what she picked up as a second line of work? She went into prostitution.
Oh, God.
Yeah, look at her picture here on my bus. The second one up over your heads there. This poor woman is going to stop. Even referred to her as a prostitute of little repute back in her own day. Yeah, those were their words now, not mine. But nonetheless, she's going to apply that trade. And she makes a name for herself here in Deadwood by going into the bars. And we had a law in our books that it was illegal for a woman to be in a bar at that time. But there she was. She'd go in there, and she would slam her fists on that counter, demanding her whiskey. She had to have it. The bartender was intimidated by her. Now, he just wanted her to shut up, so he poured her one. Her favorite saying in the bar was, "You slop that over the edge here, young man." Now, this was 140 proof whiskey going into that cup. Raised to her lips, down in one swig, she'd slap that cup on the counter and ask for another one. Now, 140 proof whiskey, mind you, is a powerful potion. You know that stuff could peel the paint right off the privy for you. And it makes you grow hair where you don't want it. And here she was, she's drinking it like it's plain old water. The guys in the bar don't like this. 2 reasons. One, there's a woman in the bar, and she ain't supposed to be there. And the second reason is she was upstaging the men on their own turf. How dare her? They tell that bartender, "There's a woman in here. Get her out of here." The bartender tells them, "That's no woman. That's Calamity Jane. You want her out, you get her out yourself." Now, no man in his right mind would ever mess with her. She had free reign over the town of Deadwood. She'd take your ear off at 20 feet if you ever tried to mess with her. Yeah, so nothing could really stand in her way. The only thing that she couldn't battle over time turned out to be time itself. Yeah, she grew too old to continue in the line of prostitution, a fortunate thing for the men around here. But that's where that local Madame Dora Dufresne stepped in, hired her on as a cook and a maid, gave her room and board. She could have lived her life out in peace if she'd wanted to, but she couldn't stay away from the whiskey. She'd go out drinking every night till she was drunk, get back to that brothel, drunker than a skunk. Noisier than all get out, she was driving business away, and Dora Dufresne had to ask her to leave. The town of Deadwood backed her up, and they ran her off. She moved 2 miles up the road behind us here to the little town of Terry. The town's not there anymore because we dug it up looking for the gold. But she ended up dying there at a tavern in Terry, August 1st, 1903. She was 51 years of age. Her death certificate listed the cause of death as inflammation of the bowels and pneumonia. But her doctor, in his own hand at the very bottom there, wrote an alternate cause of death, stating that this woman drank approximately 2 quarts of whiskey per day. Yeah, you be the judge what really killed her right there. Now, I told you she's married one time in life to that Clinton Burke, but her dying request was this: bury me next to the only man I ever loved. And guess what? It wasn't her husband Clinton. It turned out to be old Wild Bill back there. And if poor old Wild Bill don't like it, well, tough luck, because he died first. Those are stories in a nutshell for you to take with you as you continue your travels through the hills here. I hope you guys had a good time with me. I do want to tell you that Kevin Costner's costumes from all those movies he was in are inside this building here on your right. Go out and have fun in Deadwood, and if you end up doing something famous before you leave our town, I want you to come back and let me know, because by golly, I am going to